Welcome back to Cosmic Comics. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the early appearances of Moondragon within the Marvel Universe. Moondragon first appears in Iron Man, Volume 1, issue number 54, published in 1973, and written by Mike Friedrich and Bill Everett. This story begins beneath the North Pacific, where we are shown a missile firing, going into space, looping around a satellite, and then coming back to Earth. We are told all will be revealed, and Moondragon makes her first appearance in the pages of Marvel. Right now, she's having a conversation with her computer. The computer is upset at her for criticizing it, but Moondragon wants none of it, claiming its ability to display emotions is nothing but another one of her many experiments. The computer claims that she is colder than it and that she's only interested in her experiments. Then we get Moondragon's introduction, and prior to researching for this video, I am not sure if I had ever read her earliest appearances, so I was delighted to learn that her original name was Madame MacEvil. Later, Moondragon will claim that it was the computer that gave her this name, but from this panel, it looks like something she came up with herself. Madame is a scientist at heart, and one of the many things she is studying are human hybrids. Of these, she finds Namor to be the most fascinating, and has developed an intricate plan in order to capture him. A second missile is shot, only this one just cuts through the water, heading towards Namor in the frigid sea beneath Antarctica. The missile misses the submariner, but strikes an iceberg nearby. This results in the iceberg exploding and raining chunks of ice down on a nearby ship, damaging it in the process. Namor rushes in, rips planks from the ship, and proceeds to build a giant raft to save the ship's crew. After finishing his rescue, Namor goes to investigate the attack. He knows that this may very well lead to a trap, as the missile has left a clear orange track in its wake. Namor leaves to follow the missile trail, unperturbed by the possibility of a trap. Madame MacEvil and her computer are monitoring the situation. She gets upset when the computer refers to the plan as their plan, and she points out that it is her plan and her plan alone. She knows that she shouldn't let the machine get a rise out of her and sets it to work on its next task. We now switch over to Iron Man, who is headed to boost morale at Stark Industries in Seattle. He mentions that he's doing this in response to priority conversion. He is referring to the fact that this is the period of time wherein Stark Industries has stopped the sale and manufacture of weapons and are converting over to other industries. Upon arrival, he runs into a group of guys who are breaking into Stark Industries. The fellas pull out guns and start blasting. At the same time, Madame MacEvil has turned a dial and sent a beam from the same satellite from earlier to shine down upon Iron Man. The result is Iron Man's uniform stops responding, and he's turned away from the scene. Somebody has overridden his circuits and taken over his suit. Soon he finds himself flying over the ocean. Meanwhile, Namor continues to close in on his prey, noting that the trail of orange has gone on for an incredibly long distance. Madame MacEvil cackles at the success of her scheme. Here she tells us that she already possesses plenty of wealth, and that fame is meaningless to her, for her greatest, nay only thrill, comes from knowledge explored and discovered. She gets upset when her computer fails to respond to a question, but it reminds her that it was she that ordered it to be silent. It tries to agree with her affirmatively with her question, but drops in a big if. Madame MacEvil wants to know what it means by if. The computer informs her for success, the two of them must cooperate and recognize each other's worth. Madame seems to think this is cute and offers her computer some much-needed praise. Namor closes in, and as he does so, Madame orders the ship to surface and open the command link to Iron Man's uniform. Her plan is seemingly timed out perfect. Both Iron Man and Namor arrive at the exact same time. Namor accuses Iron Man of treachery. Iron Man attempts to explain, but Namor insists that Iron Man's actions speak louder than words. Namor dives beneath the ocean, and Madame McEvil sends Iron Man below after him. Iron Man knows that he might drown if he doesn't get out of here soon. He notes that his actions have a delay that makes his fighting style too slow and jerky to be effective. Namor finally lands a solid blow, and Iron Man begins to sink like a stone. The computer informs Madame of the status change, and she orders it to save Iron Man from drowning. She wants Iron Man to eject the water from his suit and shield off the rest. This allows Iron Man to recover, and again he goes on the attack. Namor notes that none of this makes any sense and decides that if he gives Iron Man time to calm down, maybe, just maybe, cooler heads will prevail. Iron Man recognizes that Namor has given him a break, and he uses this opportunity to attempt to break Madame McEvil's hold over him. At the same time, she renews her efforts in having Iron Man capture the Submariner. The battle rages forth once more. Madame is upset that Namor seems to be winning. She blames her failures on the computer, who insists that he's only following her orders. Iron Man is ordered to attack again and again. Meanwhile, Iron Man starts honing in on the source of the vibrations that are controlling him. Again, Iron Man takes off towards the Submariner, and again he takes a hard beating. Iron Man turns and attempts to ram Namor at full force. He manages to connect, catching Namor off guard, and Iron Man is afraid that he might soon kill the Submariner. Even as Iron Man secures his victory, Madame McEvil doesn't believe her computer and starts becoming physically abusive to it as a result. She's had enough, and she tells her computer that once she collects the Submariner, she plans on dismantling it and having nothing but cold, logical machines work for her from now on. I mean, can't she just uninstall the emotion software? The computer doesn't like hearing this at all. Madame orders that the computer have Iron Man go in for the kill if necessary. Iron Man goes to use his repulsor rays and finish Namor off, but now the orders that are coming through to his steel suit feel contradictory, confused even. Because of this, Namor has plenty of time to dodge the blast. The incoming blast hits the ship and sends electronics flying around within the vessel. In the process, the computer loses control of Iron Man. The ship begins to sink, and Iron Man knows there must be a connection between this and whatever was controlling him. He wishes Namor noticed the sinking ship, but he's still too busy pummeling Iron Man. Madame McEvil blames this failure on her computer, but it in turn blames the failure on her for not letting it have complete control of Iron Man. It tells her she should trust computers, not condemn them. The insults on the bottom right of this panel are kind of cute, as Madame calls the computer garbage, and it responds with, "Garbage in, garbage out." Now that Iron Man is back in control, Namor is still fighting him. Iron Man lands one hard punch in an attempt to find time to leave. Namor takes the blow, and when Iron Man chooses to flee, Namor gives chase once more. But as Iron Man rises above the surface, he's capable of moving fast enough that Namor can no longer catch him. Back inside Madame McEvil's ship, she resigns herself to today's defeat, vowing to rise again, resume her experiments, and make both Namor and Iron Man pay. The final portion of the panel teases that when they bring Madame McEvil back, they will reveal her awesome origin story. Well, she returns in several issues of Daredevil, but I'm going to begin with Daredevil Volume 1, issue number 105, published in 1973 and written by Steve Gerber. This issue begins at a dinner party being put on by the head of Matt Murdock's law firm, Kerwin K. Broderick. Here we find Kraven the Hunter hurling Daredevil off of a cliff. Just prior to Daredevil striking the ground, he blinks out of existence. He reappears in a metal chamber underwater. The walls are covered in hieroglyphs, but not the Egyptian variety. Behind the walls, Daredevil can hear the hum of machinery. He walks through these corridors for some time in what we're told is a labyrinth. At the end, Daredevil finds a massively ornate doorway. It's size is such that it would take the strength of Thor to open it up, but some form of sensor detects Daredevil's presence and swings the doors open for him. On the other side is a paradise, a multi-tiered garden of unearthly delights, an array of shapes and scents, heretofore outside of human experience. And within this garden stands one lone woman. Daredevil takes a moment to take it all in. Daredevil thinks to himself that this woman is the most beautiful woman he has ever seen. But then he realizes what's wrong. She doesn't have a heartbeat. As he moves closer, he finally picks one up, only it's extremely slow. Daredevil reaches out to shake her awake. In return, he receives a harsh blow as Madame Evil is upset that somebody would disturb her meditation. She's surprised he found his way to her chamber as she was still preparing for their meeting. Daredevil points out that just because he arrived early is no reason for her to get violent, but Madame Evil corrects him. He is not a guest. He's her prisoner. And of course, Daredevil wants to know who she is. The answer? Philosopher, warrior, scientist, lover, but above all, a priestess of Titan. She goes on to call Daredevil a thrall of Thanos, and thereby her enemy. Daredevil claims that he has never heard of Thanos, Titan, or thralls. Daredevil then wraps his billy club around her legs. Once she hits the ground, Daredevil wants to know what or where Titan is, but Madam thinks he's just being coy. She takes her hands to her temple and sends forth a mind burst, which makes Daredevil tumble backwards. She then uses her mind burst to disarm Daredevil and dispatch of his weapon. Madame Evil warns Daredevil that her mind burst can kill a man just as easily. The two keep dancing back and forth without saying much until Daredevil says, "You go first. Tell me who you are and where I am." Madame Evil seems surprised that Thanos hasn't mentioned her. She says she cannot answer his question because she is nameless, although a computer she once created called her Madame Evil, but she prefers the name given to her by her teachers of Titan, Moondragon. She was named after a cosmos-slithering beast of interstellar legend. Her origin story starts on Earth, but ends on Titan. Her parents' car crashed in the desert west of Nevada in 1953 when the car's engines and brakes failed. The crash was caused by Thanos during his first scouting mission to Earth, attempting to ensure nobody saw his spaceship. She walked away from the crash and looked up to find what she assumed was an angel standing before her, but in truth, it was an Eternal of Titan. She grabbed the angel's hand and begged to be taken to heaven, and an instant later, she is transported away to Saturn's moon Titan. I love how she puts it here. We never got to heaven. We found someplace better. Although this Titan she whisked away with looks very similar to Mentor, his name is actually Imlot. That's the name of the guy who brought her to Titan. Once Heather Douglas and Imlot arrive on Titan, we get a surprise as we see Mentor not with his wife, Sui Swan, but another woman named Kazantra. The existence of this character is problematic to say the least. In the all-new official handbook of the Marvel Universe A to Z, issue number 4, published in 2016, Kazantra is listed as a consort of Mentor. In fact, I think that's the only other time she appears in any other book, period, and that's just a copy and paste from one of the images in this issue. We're told that the reason Mentor and Kazantra can't raise Heather is because they already have so much trouble with Thanos. Being a consort to Mentor and having helped raise his children, perhaps she acted as a form of caregiver for the children while their mother was locked away in the asylum. Mentor decides to send Heather to the Shaolom Monastery, where Mentor prays she finds her soul. Not sure why they have this statue of what appears to be Buddha in an eternal shrine, but sure, Eastern influences, monks, shaved heads, yeah, ride the stereotype. While living here, Heather learned to look deeply within herself. Mentors' prayers were answered. Heather found her soul and much more. Unhampered by grades, exams, and awards of the traditional education system, Heather learned the joy of learning for learning's sake, leading her mind to fully flower. Once she had control of her mind, she used it to gain greater control of her body. She learned to withstand enormous stresses, which led to the focusing of the mind and body into discipline. She found herself Titan's foremost woman athlete and a renowned geneticist. She lived a life of serenity, but it came with a price. She says they had no way of knowing that Thanos was going to return and destroy everything the way that he did. Thanos' attack killed everybody in the monastery except for Moondragon. She vowed vengeance before falling to her knees and weeping for what was lost. Thanos controlled Titan, and somehow Moondragon escaped to her home planet Earth. At first, the only reason she came to Earth was to continue her genetic experiments, but over time her mission grew in scope. She learned that Thanos had his sights set on Earth and that his agents, or thralls, were already in place. Moondragon knew that time was short and she needed to know what kind of human or human hybrid could best fight off Thanos' thralls. For this experiment, she pitted Namor against Iron Man to study their fighting techniques, fears, and strengths. She learned that both Iron Man and Captain Marvel were based on the East Coast of the United States, so she moved across the country and built an underwater base there. Here she met an unnamed human ally who convinced her that Daredevil was one of Thanos' thralls. In fact, she's been watching the city of San Francisco and is convinced by the way they cheer his exploits that Daredevil has the city under Thanos' control, and therefore, it must be cleansed. Daredevil doesn't like the sound of the city being cleansed and is ready to stop her, but this is why she brought him here. So he can't stop it. Now that Daredevil's gone, she's free to unleash her creations upon the city. The Dark Messiah, Ramrod, and the Screamer. What delightfully scary names, and by her creations, she means precisely that. She had a hand in some form or fashion of transforming each of these three individuals into their current form at some point during the past year, within the pages of Daredevil. I'm going to briefly visit the origins of each. The Dark Messiah was introduced in Daredevil Volume 1, issue number 97, written by Jerry Conway and Gene Gerber. Daredevil finds a group of people gathered outside of a theater and swoops in to see what all the fuss is about. What he finds is a young man doing acrobatic stunts. He must have been good, as Daredevil notes that the kid is just as good as he is. The young man's name is Mordecai Jones. His act upsets a skittish dog, in the process attacks Mordecai. This knocks Mordecai backward, where his head smashes on the pavement. Daredevil charges in, taking control of the situation, telling somebody to call an ambulance and demanding that the dog be taken away. An ambulance arrives within a few minutes and the kid is taken away while Daredevil joins the police in responding to a shootout at the University Research Center. There are a few people that are a little bit critical of Daredevil not going with the kid. Mordecai is raced to the hospital, taken into the emergency room, and then forgotten about in a tide of paperwork and other patients. So Mordecai is pushed back into a corner, and that's where he's left for the time being. And after 2 hours, this pair of gnarled hands reaches out and begins pushing Mordecai. He's wheeled down a darkened corridor, past nurses who were too busy but should have noticed. He's taken to a dimly lit cubicle about the size of a broom closet, only everything has been replaced by a complex computer systems and machines of all sorts, and all of this is being controlled by our shadowy host, whose old fingers are still capable of nimble work. Those same fingers hit a button which sets into motion a series of cassette wheels. The shadowy figure tells us that Mordecai has been singled out for a meeting with destiny. The next time we see Mordecai is when he's walking down the street looking like, well, I'm not sure what that looks like. He thinks he's hot stuff, though, referring to himself as holy and saying, where he walks, choirs of angels shall sing hymns of it ever after, before introducing himself as the Dark Messiah. This guy has numerous powers. He's kind of like an evil Superman. His eye beams can blast things apart or hold things in place. He can withstand bullets, and he's got other powers like putting up impenetrable domes. Last time the Dark Messiah got loose, he gathered an army of several hundred criminals at Golden Gate Park and was only stopped when Daredevil learned his true identity in Daredevil issue number 108, written by Jerry Conway and Steve Gerber. He sort of just imploded on the spot when Daredevil called him out. Now, Moondragon has the Dark Messiah reforming in the exact same place that he disappeared from before. Number 2 of these, Angar the Screamer, was introduced at the end of Daredevil Volume 1, issue number 100, written by Steve Gerber, where we discover he's responsible for making entire sections of San Francisco go on short but very real acid-like trips, and then they forget that it ever happened. When Angar screams, reality falls apart. Angar's backstory, given to us in issue 101, is that he was a hippie who was ready to build a world of peace and freedom, man. But the older generation, they wouldn't let him build it. And his kids lost their lives and time marched on. Those who had tuned in and dropped out lined back up to join the rat race once more, man. Angar wanted vengeance on both warmonger and capitalist and those hippies who had abandoned the movement. A mysterious figure arrived and offered him power. They changed his voice and his body. Angar threatens to use his newfound powers on the one who gave them to him, but he's quickly put in his place. Angar has an electrode implanted in his skull that can be triggered to render him immense amounts of pain at any time. The man in the chair tells us that he's the same one who was controlling Mordecai. He tells Angar to focus only on Daredevil and Black Widow and to cut out all the mass hallucinations he's been causing until he's ordered to do so. Angar soon manages to capture lawyer Matt Murdock and plans on using him as bait to capture Daredevil. During his captivity, Matt points out that Angar has given up on all of his hippie ideals and he's become a villain. This new perspective really upsets Angar, who decides in the end that, you know what, Matt's right, and he decides to let him go. Much to his surprise, shortly after Matt's let go, Daredevil shows up, and now Angar is ready to move in and fight. But he lets Daredevil know that, look, man, I don't want to do this, and the only reason why I'm doing this is because I have to. He's eventually stopped when the Black Widow gets close enough to threaten his life with her widow sting. Once things calm down and nobody is looking his way, Angar uses a low hum of his voice to alter the hero's perception of reality, and he escapes. In Daredevil issue number 108, Angar has adopted a mantra to keep his cool. He keeps repeating, I am David Ungar. I am sane. But thanks to Moondragon's interference, Angar can't hold back any longer. Sometimes you just gotta scream. And as he does so, reality bursts apart for those around him. The final member of the trio, Ramrod, was introduced in Daredevil, Volume 1, issue number 103, also written by Steve Gerber. He used to be a foreman on an offshore oil rig, where he was known for being a real hard-ass and pushing his men real hard. That is, until an oil drum fell on top of him and nearly killed him. The doctor said he would never move again, but then several weeks later, he woke up in a strange place with lasers blasting out of his fist, and he had enough strength to rip a steel handle right off the door. Voices ask him to turn around, and the people that are standing there inform him that his bones have been replaced by bands of steel. Ramrod has been made into a cyborg. His skeleton structure completely replaced. This results in a 10-fold increase in strength. But Ramrod is smart enough to know that there has to be a price. And the price is, he has to kill Daredevil. Ramrod didn't want to be a murderer, but his captors have injected him with a deadly chemical, and he's forced to agree to cooperate before they will give him the antidote. His initial attempt to kill Daredevil was thwarted by a Daredevil-Spider-Man team-up that ended when Spider-Man ended up kicking Ramrod. Ramrod ended up falling off a building and landing on his head. You be the judge. Here we discover that Ramrod has been in a coma this entire time, but is awakened at Moondragon's suggestion. Yeah, so Daredevil is pissed off about Moondragon basically making all of these villains specifically to come and kill him. Daredevil grabs Moondragon and forces her to look at his face. He tells her the Eternals of Titan didn't make her wise, only arrogant. And he challenges her to look within his mind to see how others perceive her. She takes his head and probes his mind, and for a moment, the two achieve total communication. And in that moment, she learns that Daredevil was telling the truth. He really does think she's arrogant. More so, she sees the full extent of her error with Daredevil because he isn't evil or a thrall of Thanos. It's just as she learns this truth that her mysterious ally makes an appearance. Something like 9, 10 issues, I forget the exact count, have been leading up to this big reveal. Who is the man behind the mask? Who have we been waiting to see for all this time? It's Kerwin J. Broderick, the head of Matt Murdock's law firm. I will say that there has been an entire side plot line with the law firm and Matt Murdock disagreeing with the senior partner's decisions that I didn't really ever get into. This was also the same man who was throwing the dinner party at the beginning of this episode. And now that Moondragon knows that Daredevil has a good heart, that's enough for him to kill her off. He shoots Moondragon, and he mocks her as she dies for trembling and clutching at Daredevil for support. The issue ends by flashing back to the dinner party from which Daredevil disappeared at the beginning of the episode. Kraven the Hunter has now been taken into custody, but before the police can leave, there is a bright flash of light and Terex appears. Not Terrax. Terex. He's like a weaker, off-brand version of Terrax. In Daredevil 106, we learn that Kerwin Broderick is San Francisco's most respected lawyer, and Daredevil wants to know why Moondragon had to die. Why did Kerwin cook up this scheme? And he doesn't really give an answer. He instructs Daredevil to observe Terex, whose power is that of life itself. Elsewhere in the city, the Dark Messiah projects an impenetrable force field over the city, cutting San Francisco off from the rest of the world. He then starts using his eye lasers to blast cars. Ramrod is running through the city, crushing everything that stands before him, bursting into houses, tossing people around, and Angar, the Screamer, his whereabouts are currently unknown. And again, Daredevil wants to know why he had to take Moondragon's life. And if she is dead, dude, you can put her down. If she's dead, you can even drop her, but that really wouldn't be very nice. But just put the body down. Kerwin shares a little bit more of his backstory here. For years, he used his law firm to rule San Francisco and earn the gratitude of the underworld. He did this in part by getting public servants to keep their mouths shut. Everything was going fine until Daredevil showed up. Well, Daredevil and this uppity young lawyer named Matt Murdock, who was causing trouble within his law firm and refusing to plead cases the way that Broderick needed them to be pleaded, and turning the whole place into a verbal battleground. Then Broderick met Moondragon, who, ironically, after attempting to ensure she met with a lawyer who had a stellar reputation, she was looking for somebody honorable to aid her in her mission to protect Earth from Thanos. To convince him, Moondragon took Kerwin to her undersea fortress. Once he was there, he realized she was telling the truth, and Kerwin saw an opportunity to use her to get what he wanted, which was for somebody to take out Daredevil. Another problem was after seeing all that amazing technology, Kerwin was no longer content with ruling San Francisco de facto. Now he wanted to be the real deal. He literally wants to be the king of San Francisco and rule as a monarch with absolute power. Daredevil realizes that Kerwin is delusional and completely off his rocker. Kerwin demands that Daredevil kneel before him and then says something about joining with Terex. Daredevil attempts to stop him, but ends up getting shot by the same gun as Moondragon, but we soon learn that that was that gun's last charge, and a weak one at that. Daredevil isn't killed, but he has been incapacitated. Kerwin decides to return and kill Daredevil, but only after he's joined with Terex. Speaking of which, Terex gives a wave of his hand and the garden turns into a jungle. People scream and want to know who or what he is. He tells them, "I am Terex, he who is of the earth." At his whim, things grow or die, and just like that, the garden that was a jungle is withered away. One of the cops gets a big head on his shoulder and decides he's going to kill this freak in nature. Terex disagrees and uses this officer to prove a point. The man keeps growing older. Terex tries to explain that he is neither good nor evil. He is an embodiment of life force itself, and his control over any life form is total. At the same time, he says, "He who can control me shapes me." And with that, the police officer dies and turns into dust. KSG reporter Lucretia is on the scene with her cameraman Sandy, who came here looking for Daredevil and Kraven. Lucretia corners Officer Paul Carson and asks what happened to Daredevil and Kraven. He tells her that Daredevil vanished and that Kraven must have escaped during the confusion after Terex showed up. Amazingly, he's ready to point out an even bigger problem. Carson must be a super smart cop because he's capable of deducing that the path of death that Terex is leaving behind him, he's doing this by absorbing life energy as he walks and thus making himself constantly more powerful. Daredevil wakes up on the floor, recovered from the blast. He's shocked to be alive. Beside him, he recognizes the faint heartbeat of Moondragon, who informs him that she needs to get to the Regenesis treatment lab down the corridor. Daredevil asks her to lead the way. She insists that she'll need to be carried and rations her strength out in small spurts. The only reason Moondragon survived the blast was her nervous system was capable of reacting to it immediately. Most people would have had a panic response, but Moondragon's body is so disciplined that it instinctively fought back. As the wall panel for the Regenesis chamber slides back, Daredevil is left feeling like a country boy who's seen his first skyscraper. As he looks about with his senses, all he can think is how he's not cut out for cosmic adventures. This level of tech is way above his level, and he's no Reed Richards. Basically, Daredevil is beginning to feel a little out of his league. Daredevil lays Moondragon down on the table. He's at a loss what to do next, but Moondragon is willing to talk him through the process. First thing he needs to do is turn the yellow dial. And, oh, yeah, that's kind of his weakness. Colors. He even shouts out, I can't. Daredevil admits that he's blind. Even then, he can see colors by feeling how much heat various colors absorb from his fingertips, but that takes time, and he's afraid of making a wrong guess. Moondragon calls him closer, preparing to do something with the last of her strength while Daredevil apologizes. Moondragon hits him with a mind blast. Daredevil's head feels like it's on fire, and his radar senses go black. He's worried, but then things begin taking shape before him. It's a miracle. Daredevil can see. He's super stoked and ready to get her instructions. Moondragon is silent while the Regenesis raid does its thing, and Daredevil is afraid that maybe he got there too late. But then she rises from the table. Daredevil tries to play the big, strong man with her by offering to help her down, but Moondragon insists that, no, man, it's cool. I'm fully recovered. Then things get a little awkward as Daredevil asks to hold her without making excuses. Okay, I get it. He's overwhelmed because he can see again, but Moondragon still seems a little weirded out by this and insists that now is not the time. She slyly insists that they need to save the city first. As they wander through Moondragon's undersea base, she's dismayed to discover that every device she owned that could have stopped Terrax, those are the ones that Kerwin came down here and destroyed. Moondragon, though, she still has a contingency plan. There's one device he couldn't have destroyed, a plastic cylinder. Daredevil is confused as to how this is a weapon, and that's because it's not. Moondragon uses the device to teleport them both away. They both reappear at the site of the dinner party 1/100th of a second later. The cops and Daredevil leave to follow Terrax going downtown, and all of them are followed by the KGN news crew. We're given a panel of an ever-growing Terrax heading towards San Francisco. Terrax hears the sound of a motor and he expects opposition. Roaring in his direction in a yellow convertible is Angar. As he rushes forward, his girlfriend begs for him to turn back, fearing that he's rushing towards a terrible end. Angar is happy to have Terrax on his side and attempts to show solidarity by saluting him as he drives by. He wants Janice, his girlfriend, to salute with him, but she can't, because Janice has already grown old. Janice is dead. The police cruiser gets caught up in traffic, most likely brought on by the chaos in the city. Daredevil and Black Widow decide to continue on foot. Along the way, they run into the Dark Messiah, whom Daredevil fails to recognize. Since he's new with his eyes, this is literally the first time he's laid eyes on Mordecai. The Dark Messiah uses those eye powers to dash our dynamic duo against a wall. Daredevil regrets that his sight hindered him from being able to detect the incoming blow. Him and Natasha are being crushed. Both are saved by Ramrod, who burst through the wall behind them, grabbing one of them in each arm. Natasha notes that his grip is almost as painful as the Dark Messiah's eye beams. Once Ramrod lands, his intentions are clear. He wants the Dark Messiah to help kill our heroes. As the Dark Messiah prepares to attack, Natasha tells Daredevil to backflip out of the way. Daredevil attempts to do this, but his depth perception is off and he lands on his back. The Dark Messiah picks Daredevil up and starts slapping him around. He calls him Devil Spawn and points out that God robbed him of his agility when he needed it most. He also thinks that it's his divine right to kill Daredevil and is about to do so before Moondragon shouts at him to stop. She commands him to turn and meet his maker. She pronounces him saved and announces that his evil shall be no more, and his energy begins to fade away. Moondragon transforms the Dark Messiah back to who he was before she intervened in his life. She says it was nothing really, just a reshuffling of his intraform molecular migration. Daredevil then asks the unthinkable. Knowing that she can do this, he requests that she make him blind once more. Moondragon looks surprised, but Daredevil insists that he can't function as Daredevil without them hypersenses. Daredevil claims that he's seen the one thing he wanted to see, Natasha. Moondragon agrees to revert Daredevil to his previous state, but requests that he also remember the sight of her. Daredevil says that's something he could never forget, as Moondragon sheds a tear. So Daredevil loses his sight once more. Meanwhile, the Black Widow is blasting her widow stings right into Ramrod's brow without them doing a thing. This means that she was literally trying to kill him. Instead, she'll have to rely on her prowess as she continues to keep out of his grip. As Ramrod gives chase, Daredevil arrives and trips Ramrod up with his billy club. Natasha makes fun of him for getting tripped up, and Ramrod is ready to get revenge for the chuckles, and he's happy to see he has some backup to help him out. Broderick and Terex have arrived together. Broderick points out the dead look in Terex's eyes, signaling to those below that Broderick is now in control of the beast. He also points out that Terex has started molting in preparation for the joining. He wraps this up by saying that the entire city will be dead within an hour unless he's crowned King of San Francisco. Issue number 107 begins with Terex entering his melding phase. Broderick is happy to see how everybody fears him and Terex. Daredevil asks Moondragon, what's up with all this melding talk? Okay, so Broderick created a creature without a soul, but it still has a mind link with Broderick, which enables the monster to move and think. Once Broderick melds with Terex, they will become a single entity. Terex opens a portal, his distilled life essence, and Roderick leaps atop it. Roderick slowly sinks into the portal, and as he does so, Terex's dead eyes begin to come back to life. And then it happens. Broderick and Terex are now one. He demands the city crown him king once again within an hour, or he will suck the life out of it. He keeps prattling on, but Daredevil has had enough and decided to go on the attack. The way Daredevil sees it, he has nothing to lose if the only other option is to lay down and become a subject of Terex. He swings into action, but as soon as his legs touch Terex, they go weak and he comes crashing to the ground. Black Widow and Moondragon both rush in to help Daredevil. Black Widow wants to know what is wrong. Moondragon knows that he's paralyzed. She tried to warn him that direct contact with Terex can be fatal. Terex isn't just a man, he's an embodiment of our planet's life force, and as such has the power over anything that lives. That includes strengthening, crippling, renewing, or destroying. Terex or Broderick, or whatever we need to call him now, deliberately let Daredevil survive, and even goes as far to let him know that the paralysis will soon wear off. Terex informs him this is his warning, not to mess with him, and next time any such antics will end in Daredevil's death. The weakened Daredevil is carried off the battlefield by Black Widow and Moondragon and taken to a police car. Once he's seated, Black Widow patronizes him by telling him to rest up and we'll get him next time. Daredevil pulls off those rose-colored glasses and wants to know what good it'll do. Officer Carson chimes in, "None if you keep talking like that." Then Daredevil is a delightful prick right back to the cop. Oh, sure, the problem was my attitude. I should be more positive. Well, you can shove your pep talk, Carson. What everything comes down to is, this guy is out of Daredevil's league. How is an acrobat supposed to take on something with godlike powers? We pick back up with our heroes at the office of Police Commissioner O'Hara. The chief is angry that Moondragon has told him that the city needs to surrender, and O'Hara thinks that they've gone crazy. He then storms out. Moments later, one of the cops burst in announcing that Terrax and Captain Marvel are both battling it out in Golden Gate Park. Officer Carson offers to fly our three heroes there using the commissioner's helicopter. And unfortunately, this is where I have to cut this episode off. This story arc and the Thanos War dovetail into each other, and I promise to wrap up my analysis of both storylines in a future episode of Cosmic Comics. But this was a great introduction to Moondragon, a great starting place for the Thanos War, and I'm sure many of you were as surprised as I was to learn that she started out as a villain within the Marvel Universe. I want to say thanks for watching Cosmic Comics. If you love old comics, 80s cartoons, nostalgia feels, and great art, please check out my good friend Danny's channel over at Drawing Conversations. I think he's got a lot of good stuff going on over there. Thanks for watching Cosmic Comics. Feel free to hit any of the buttons below. I'm out.